Ja, guten Morgen and good morning and a warm welcome to you from the studio here in Berlin. My name is Johannes Kröhnert. I'm the head of Brussels office and I will be your moderator today for this panel discussion. As we do have non-German speaking panelists with us, we will hold this discussion in English. Our focus today will be on the European upcoming EU regulation for artificial intelligence, the AI Act. The European Commission presented its proposal in April last year, so 1.5 years have passed since then, and today we want to take stock. Together with policymakers and the tech industry, we want to discuss what's the current state of negotiations, which issues are the most contentious, how can we ensure this balance between trust and innovation, and what is needed for a successful implementation. Now, I'm delighted to discuss these questions with a round of top-level speakers today. First, let me introduce my fellow neighbors sitting here on the panel. I will start with you, Kristina, Professor Kristina Sinemus. She is the Hessian Minister for Digital Strategy and Development and was previously Managing Director of Genius, a consulting agency specializing in science communication. Very glad to have you with us, Kristina. Good morning.
Thank you.
Then I turn to Dirk, Dr. Dirk Schlesinger. He is Chief Digital Officer of TÜV Süd and Director of the TÜV AI.Lab. A warm welcome to you, Dirk.
Glad to be here.
And then we have 3 panelists joining us online. I will start with you, Irina. Irina Orssich is joining us from Brussels. Irina leads the AI Sector Policy Unit within the European Commission's Directorate General for Communication, Networks, Content and Technology. Thanks so much for being with us, Irina.
Thank you for the invitation.
And then joining us online from the plenary session in Strasbourg, we have 2 members of the European Parliament with us. I will first welcome Dragoș Tudorache. He is chair of the Committee on Artificial Intelligence in the Digital Age and leading rapporteur on the AI Act in the Committee on Civil Liberties, Justice and Home Affairs. Dragoș, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Good morning.
And then we have also Axel Voss with us. Axel is a member of the Committee on Legal Affairs, and there he is rapporteur for the committee opinion on the AI Act, and he was previously rapporteur for the Parliament's initiative report on artificial intelligence. We are very delighted to having you with us. Axel, good morning.
Yes, hello, good morning.
Well, thank you all for being with us today. We have an excellent panel of very knowledgeable speakers, and I think we will start right into the discussion. I will start with asking a single question to all of you, and then we will have a more open discussion. Irina, I will start with you. The European Commission has been focusing on artificial intelligence for several years, and you are leading the AI Policy Sector Unit. And I think it's no exaggeration if we say that you are the brain, or one of the brains behind the Commission's proposal behind the AI Act. Can you give us a quick overview of where Europe currently stands when it comes to AI development and use, and also explain why we need a European AI Act?
Thank you. Where we stand, we always hear that the US and China are so much leading, and that we are very much in the danger of being left out and really missing the train. I believe the picture is not that bad. Indeed, the US and China are leading in many respects, but we also have a number of qualities in Europe. We have excellent research, we have very gifted people, but also we are very strong in some sectors, and our industry is very strong, which gives us a sound databases to develop AI applications. So I believe that there is a lot which we can build on, not to completely miss the train. But then we also know that Europe in some respect is different. And if we look, for example, at data protection and the willingness of the people really to trust applications, to feel safe when using things, that also implies that there is a wish for an AI Act. And there we can very much see how much the discussions have changed over the last years. So when the first times there was a talk about possibly regulating AI, for many people this looked like a scandal. And now there is a broad consensus that this is something which should happen, and the discussion is much more about the detail, how this should happen. And I believe this is very important for people, but also for companies to trust and to have legal certainty.
Thank you, Irina. The picture is not that bad. I will keep that in mind. And I will come to you, Axel. You were in charge of the European Parliament's initiative report on AI that was adopted in May. And indeed, you had a bit different picture in the report. It states that there's a risk of European actors being marginalized when it comes to standard setting, but also when it comes to technology development. Now we're talking about the AI Act as the European answer to addressing these developments. How do you view the potential of the AI Act, and do you think we will be able to catch up with China and the US?
So, to be able to catch up with China and the US, there is not only necessary the AI Act. Here we need to have a kind of a strategy in place. And this is what we have done also with the AI.Lab report. It's more needed. It's not only the legal tool, it's also prioritizing. It's putting a lot of money into it, having the infrastructure, having the skills, and all of this. Then we might come to a kind of a strategy in catching up with the other regions in the world. The AI Act itself is just a kind of a tool in saying to our society and also to all the developers, this is how you can create a kind of a legitimate way forward and how you can deal with algorithms in such a way. This is not the initiative what I'm looking for at the end. If we would like to be successful also in this, here we need more. This is the first message. Regarding the AI Act itself, it's a good starting point, but so far I have the feeling we are more hindering AI instead of enabling innovation. And this is then, I would always ask also the Commission at the end, be prepared to withdraw this tool if we are doing this not right. So it's better to have nothing in place instead of something what is totally has the adverse effect in these. And so still there is hope that we are getting this right in a way, but so far I see in our discussions in the Parliament more in protecting everything instead of enabling.
You're more critical, Axel. Thank you very much. We will, I think, have the chance to discuss these points a bit. Now, let's turn to you, Kristina. You are representing Hessen, a German state that is not only hosting the financial capital of the EU, but that is also home to a flourishing technology industry. Can you tell us a bit about the expectations that you hear with regard to AI when you speak with businesses, but also when you speak with civil society?
Thank you for taking it up. I try to not only put Hessen in that what we are working for, so we have AI made in Hessen agenda, and this is maybe or could be maybe a kind of a model for a European future agenda, because, and I want to introduce one fact I think which is important in discussing how we can get the research in the industry. So artificial intelligence is a key technology. We have heard it in the morning of the 21st century. And according to the studies, the German GDP is expected to increase by more than less 12% by 2030 due to AI-based innovation alone. So I think, and I go for what Axel said, I think we have to enable innovation to be competitiveness in Europe. And that means we should find areas where the potential of the future of new projects, of new ideas, especially of the startup companies and the small and medium companies, should have a future, an option. And how do we do this? We can do this on two areas. On one area is take only one part from the AI Act and regulate it. That means only the focus on high-risk applications, and then all the other innovation areas make in a kind of a sandboxes able. Try to have the new products. That is one, what I want to bring here in the discussion. Only restrict to a close focus on high-risk applications, and then do not target definition as general software regulation, do not over-regulate, make innovation possible. And that means invest and support sandboxes. And that is necessary, especially for the startup companies, for the small and medium companies. Then evaluate these processes after 2 or 3 years, and then think about how or whether we need another regulation on top to the right risk levels. And that is what I would propose to the AI Act, because at the end of the day, people only trust if they can get a feeling for the products on the market. So we need innovation, and then we need products, and then we have to communicate with the people what AI is about and which kind of future challenges and usable things they will have in their social science. And this is necessary to have research, bring this innovative to products on the market, and then discuss with the people how they can use these products.
Thank you, Kristina. Also the focus on boosting innovation, we will discuss this. I will go to you, Dirk, now. You're Chief Digital Officer of TÜV Süd, so you represent one of the largest testing, inspection, and certification organizations. The TÜVs are well known in Germany for assessing physical products. But here we are talking about AI, so we are talking about software, about algorithms. My question to you, can algorithms be assessed? And if yes, how do you think does an AI assessment differ from this old-fashioned product testing?
So I'd like to turn the question around, can humans be assessed? Actually, we do this, right? There's exams, there's driver licenses, there's a lot of things where you actually assess a system, a complex system. Now, if that's true, of course, AI can be assessed. Now, the question is how. If we talk about AI, I think one thing we have to be careful about, it's a software product, as with everything else we know, but it's also a data product. So we have an additional dimension we have to certify, to test. But in the end, I cannot see any reason why there should not be an assessment. Now, do we know exactly how to do this today? I don't think so, and I know this is self-serving, but tomorrow we have the AI Forum together with BSE and the Heinrich Hertz Institute and the TÜV here, where we go with academia, with research, into certifiability of AI, and actually we do have something called a certification readiness matrix. So we're fully aware that certain aspects of AI, i.e. the procedural part, software quality assurance equivalence, we can handle quite well today. So there's actual norms and standards behind it. Others, like robustness or explainability, yes, research is required. And that's what we're doing.
Thank you, Dirk. And now I'll turn to Dragoș. Dragoș, you are the European Parliament's point man on the AI Act, and in this position you directly negotiate with the other political groups. Axel has already a bit mentioned the negotiations that are difficult. I think we are all very interested in hearing if you could give us an idea of which issues are currently being discussed, which policy issues there's growing alignment, which issues are more contentious. If you could just give us a glimpse.
Good morning. First of all, I will try to be a little bit more optimistic than Axel, simply because I still think that the options are all in our hands. So if we, and this is an objective that I fully share, if we wish to use this instrument as an opportunity to create the right rules to actually achieve one objective, which is the one to put trustworthy AI framework in place, but at the same time to stimulate and foster innovation, and finding the right balance between these two objectives is indeed, I think, the most difficult task that we have ahead of us as policymakers. But again, because we still have all the ends in our hands in this process, I am optimistic that with the appropriate amount of wisdom and patience, we will get there. So you asked what I think are the areas that are, let's say, politically still difficult in our conversations, or the bigger stakes, let's say, in this negotiation. I think someone already mentioned the issue of definitions. And indeed, it starts with a definition. The definition is key because that is where you start defining and setting out the scope of application of this regulation. This is where I also agree with what the minister said, that we have to be very careful what we capture in this definition and what we don't. This cannot be, I said it and I will continually say it, this cannot be a software EU regulation. It's not about that. There are myriads of softwares and complex systems that are not AI, at least are not AI in the spirit of how we should be understanding AI for the purpose of this regulation. There needs to be a certain degree of complexity, there needs to be a certain use of and types of techniques that are being used, and there has to be a certain degree of autonomy in the functioning of such algorithms so that they are actually becoming AI in the meaning, in the scope of this regulation. So getting this definition right is fundamental for the work we do. We have debates inside the negotiating team on whether we use a definition that is close or replicates what has been done at OECD level, or whether we adapt the definition to something that fits better or worse in the eyes of different political groups, our situation right now. I think I'm optimistic that we can actually find that if I look at the positions of the political groups, if I look also at the definition of the OECD, and at the proposals that are right now on our table of discussions and negotiations, I'm optimistic that we can find that right definition to suit that balance between innovation and trustworthiness and, let's say, human centricity that we are looking to achieve in this text. Then a second important, I wouldn't call it a battlefield, but an area where I see intense discussions is what will end up, in fact, as prohibited practices of AI and what will end up as being high-risk practices of AI, and whether or not we introduce the idea of a risk analysis for the algorithms of AI that will end up on the high-risk list of use cases. In other words, do we go with the Commission approach right now, which is to list areas, sectors that are prone to be high risk, and then try to bring as much precision to those definitions as possible, or whether we also introduce an additional filter, which would actually be looking and weighing the benefits versus the risks so that you have an overall risk assessment that tells you, yes, this particular use case is indeed high risk and therefore comes under the scope of the regulation or not. This is a discussion that politically, ideologically appears to be a complicated one, because you have the left side of the house on the other side who is looking to have fundamental rights risk assessments for all applications that would fall under that risk. So this is where we will need to find a balance, and at least as a rapporteur, my intention here is that with these risk assessments, whether we do them from the point of view of the left side of the house, fundamental rights, or whether we do them from the point of view of the right side of the house, that they do not represent and they do not add up to an additional burden for businesses. For me, that is the most important filter that we have to apply for this, just to be very clear. If this becomes something that hinders instead of helps in narrowing down those applications will be falling under the scope of the text or not, again, we will have to think again whether we want to do this or not. So again, this is a second area where I see big discussions ahead. And then I think, just to stay on the optimistic side of things, I think we also share a lot in terms of the overall vision that we want to instill in this regulation. We share the role of sandboxes. And I also heard what the minister said, and I very much agree with her that I think the success of how we'll be implementing this text in the shape or form that we'll reach at the very end of the negotiation, the success of its implementation will rest very much on the ecosystem that we will create for our businesses, big and small, to innovate in a safe environment and to reach compliance in a safe environment. And that's why, and this is where I think all political groups agree that we should be multiplying sandboxes as much as we can, that we should be supporting sandboxes at every possible level, from municipal all the way to national and cross-border, as much as we can, and that we should set as high objectives for these sandboxes as we can to allow for this engagement between businesses, between companies that want to create AI and the regulators in a safe space where they can achieve compliance. So I think that with the right focus in this regulation on this crucial part of fostering innovation and promoting innovation, I think the overall effect of the text, again, if we do all of these other things right, the definitions, the way we're going to approach high risk and so on and so forth, I think we can achieve at the end what we all wish to achieve, which is put the tools in place to protect our citizens from potentially harmful AI, because that is a fundamental principle of this text, but at the same time, not hinder the innovative environment that is so crucial for our economies, particularly in the geopolitical context in which we find ourselves today.
Dragoș, thank you very much for this in-depth insight you gave us. And in fact, you mentioned several points of discussion. Let me take one step back. If we follow the debate, I think it really is on trying to find the right balance between these seemingly opposing policy goals, and that is on the one hand ensuring that AI systems are safe and trustworthy, and on the other hand also enabling innovation and also enable the competitiveness of European industry. So in a nutshell, you could say it is a bit about regulating more or regulating less. And the question I would like to ask you, are these two objectives, innovation versus competitiveness, innovation versus trust, are these two objectives a contradiction, or can we reach both? And if we can reach both, what's the golden way to move forward? I mean, it's a very difficult question, but what is your take on this? It's an open question. Dirk, you want to go first?
I of course do have an opinion here, right? So let me start with a tagline. The tagline is that trust technology into innovation and benefit. So in the end, I think the core of this like dichotomy we have been discussing is it's about adoption. How can we make sure that AI systems are adopted fast, because adoption drives, new ideas, new applications, commercial success and what have you. And I would think that adoption is contingent of the trust of people do have in the specific application. Let me give you two numbers, and I know they're contradictory. The first one is in last year, the TÜV-Verband commissioned a poll where more than 70% of customers being asked that, yes, we do want to have a token of trust in order to really use the application. And yes, an independent third party would be helpful to really kind of transport this token of trust. The second is a recent poll done by Bitkom. Not going to go into exact numbers, but basically they asked how many companies do see benefits in AI or see huge potential for their business. 2/3 of the companies asked basically said that. And then they asked, so how is it about implementation? How many of these companies are actually implementing or thinking about implementing AI systems applications? Well, it was about 1/3. So we do have a lack of aspiration, who wants AI, and a lack of implementation. And the question is why, and do you see risk? All of these companies said, yes, there are risks in the data space, in data confidentiality. And just let me share one story. That's the startup I'm working with in the medical AI area, where they said, if we would have something where we could prove to our prospective new customers, the early adopters are easy, they're going to buy it anyway, right? But the second wave, those where the scaling comes into a startup, if we would have something where we say, yes, this is checked, proven, there is no risk in terms of GDPR and anything else, that would drive revenues, that would drive company valuation. So long story short, I think if certification or assessment or a label, a trademark is done right, it will drive adoption and it will drive innovation.
Thank you, Dirk. Kristina, you raised your hand.
Yes, I want to make 2 points. One is I'm totally agree that we have to narrow as much as possible the definition on the really risks. And then you asked whether we can go in this or in that direction. I think even in AI, as it is a very complex technology, we can go in one or the other direction. It's not black and white. We have to have a kind of a breathable regulation system. And that means, in the first step, let us very narrow regulate only the high risk, and then try how AI can work, try how we can have in the sandboxes experience. And that, at the end of the day, will help us to find a European way. And Hessen is now leading a working group of all the Bundesländer, where we want to have a position on AI. And the direction goes in have innovation-friendly and responsible AI environment. And environment and ecosystem always means more than black and white. It's always a system. And if we think in a system of regulation, then it has to be breathable, and then we have to have experience as a first step, and afterwards regulation. And I think this could be a compromise in the way we are now going forward in the regulation. Do not go the narrow-based, risk-based regulation system, because that is in the history a hindrance for innovation, has been a hindrance for innovation, for instance, in life sciences. And AI is a bit similar in the complexity.
Mm-hmm. A breathable regulatory framework. Thank you, Kristina. Our panelists online. Anyone wants to join the debate? Yes, Irina.
If I may, thank you. No, I completely agree. And for the European Commission, what we call excellence and trust are always two sides of the same coin. So it is not that the regulation comes alone. And the regulation, by the way, according to our proposal, leaves about 85% of all AI systems unregulated because they're not considered to be high risk. And for these 85% of systems, we only propose the adoption of voluntary codes of conduct. But now we have the 15%, and these are very important AI systems. So there indeed, next to the regulation, we propose a system of building competitiveness, building innovation. We have the regulatory sandboxes, and most importantly, the AI Act does not come alone, but the same day it adopted the proposal for the AI Act, the Commission also adopted the coordinated plan, and that is a package of measures of member states and Commission on how to support AI, how to push AI forward. And there, for example, we have a number of measures on research, on testing of AI, which again goes hand in hand with the AI Act, with the sandboxes, with the development of trustworthy AI. We have measures to help financing companies. We have all the infrastructure behind what is needed in terms of data, computing capacity, but also talent skills. And then for the first time, we also have a sectorial approach where we point on a number of key sectors where really jointly with member states, we want to support the whole ecosystem, the whole life cycle. That includes climate, environment, health, the public sector, law enforcement, agriculture, and a number of others. So it is really two sides of the same coin. It goes together, it goes hand in hand. And for us, the one is not thinkable without the other one. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Two sides of the same coin. I think that's a good compromise. I think everybody is on board with that. Dragoș, you mentioned also the discussions on the high-risk classification. The Commission has made its proposal. It tries to focus on areas, and you seem to be a bit critical. Could you a bit elaborate? Why do you see this critically, and what would be your suggestion to regulate it instead?
Oh, I'm not critical of the approach to have the high-risk applications and also the approach of the Commission to put them in an annex. I think it's a good way of doing it. What I would not do is to make it an exhaustive list, because AI continues to evolve. It evolves every day. The AI of next year is certainly not going to be the AI of this year. So this list of high risks needs to be an open one, so that in a lighter process, you could ensure the adaptability and the future-proofing of this text. That's number one. Number two, I think there is still room to narrow down even further and to bring even further precision to the definition of some of the areas that are now listed as high risk, with the purpose that I mentioned earlier, which is to make sure that we don't capture too much. Irina was mentioning the 85% that is not, let's say, caught in the net of this regulation. I think that if we can increase that percentage even further, I will at least be happy, because indeed we have to make sure, and whether we do this by precision of definition, whether we do this by introducing this type of filter that I was mentioning earlier, i.e. an actual risk assessment for each of the use cases, that's something that remains to be negotiated, remains to be discussed amongst us. But again, overall, my objective remains that the end result of this list of high risks is that we only cover what is indeed high risk, because that's the key. And again, listening to the minister and what she was saying, I fully support. The key to the success of this text is to make sure that we're only focusing on what we really want to protect, what really brings about a risk to the interests of our consumers, of our citizens, and not by accident unwillingly put additional burden on potential applications that are not in fact risk prone. I've also introduced what I like to call an industrial AI filter. In other words, through an amendment, I've suggested a way. I'm not saying that it's the perfect definition. We can still discuss it, and we'll get to the point of discussing it. But again, my intention was to introduce a filter to differentiate between what I call industrial AI, i.e. AI that does not affect the interests of humans, the rights of humans in any way, and therefore should, by definition, by principle, not be captured by the compliance requirements of this text. And then AI that is indeed prone to risk to human interests and individuals' rights and consumer rights, and therefore should be part of the application of the high-risk annex. So these are just some steps. There are, I'm sure, others, and colleagues will come with further suggestions, proposals of how to make this high-risk definitions and this annex as precise as possible. And I will, as a rapporteur, support all attempts, all proposals that will try to bring this crucial precision.
Trying to make it as precise as possible. Thank you, Dragoș. Time is running, so I have to go to the next subject. Besides the question of requirements, there's also the question of conformity assessment. Who should assess the compliance of high-risk AI systems? And the Commission has proposed, in a way, a two-way approach. So for some AI system, it says the mandatory involvement of a notified body, of an independent conformity assessment body, is necessary. This is, for instance, the case for biometric identification. Whereas for other high-risk systems, the Commission says that a mere self-declaration of the provider is sufficient. And this is, for instance, the case for infrastructure applications or AI-based education systems. Axel, what is your take on this? I know this debate is also very prominent in the European Parliament.
Yes, so of course, somehow we have to evaluate if this is done by the company along the line of some requirements, and somebody has to check, and or if there's a third-party assessment or so, someone probably has to do this. The question is, we are adding a lot of requirements and safeguards for the system itself and also for the deployer. And so we are asking a lot already, and when I'm hearing that this is creating at minimum 300,000 euros up to a couple of million euros in implementing these, then I'm highly alarmed. So probably we should also have a kind of an approach to it, what might be very simple but efficient. I don't know if this is existing at the end, but this should be our goal in coming forward. What we also should have in mind, even if we are thinking about of a kind of a third-party conformity assessment, we do not have the number of experts, that this might also come to a kind of a delay of the whole development. So this is a practical question, not a legal one, but we should have this in mind, that we are also coming for a more simple approach because of these strength of these reality. We need, and this is the idea behind, we need to catch up with all the other regions in the world. Otherwise, we are out. And the window of opportunity or of timing is extremely narrow. And that's why we should think here more practically, a kind of a practical way forward. If we can handle this by third-party confirmation assessment, then it might be the best way forward, but because of the practicalities, we have probably more, or we should more consider for now the way forward that also the self-assessment should be kind of a goal. So I'm more than less in favor of these self-assessment because of that we do not have a number of experts around who can go through this conformity assessment. Otherwise, we are delaying ourselves. So that's why I think probably the truth is in the middle of both of these, but so far I need more that we have to have this initiative in coming more forward with more speed. That's why I think the self-assessment I would more prioritize instead of the third-party assessment. Mm-hmm. But it depends. So, but what we have to have in mind, let's move forward fast.
Thank you. Axel, I will just give the floor to you. Self-assessment as a possibility for high-risk AI systems. What do you respond?
I'll be provocative and say, who says that self-assessments are necessarily more resource efficient as if somebody who does it for business all day long does it for you? Now, I mean, this is why we go to specialists. Now, this is the provocative statement. What I'm saying here, I would believe, yes, there's rules. I mean, even the self-assessment has to, conform to certain rules. So not everybody can develop their own rules for a self-assessment. And I would offer the thought that it's not just like a strict regulation. There is self-assessment, and you have to kind of self-assess, or you have to go to a third party. We should be more breathing in that respect, and that the notified bodies, the TIC companies, can actually offer help in a self-assessment or an assessment per se. And if we work together, make that fast, because I fully agree with Mr. Voss that we have to be quick. And I would think that if the TIC companies and the regulators work together with industry, we can come up with a pretty efficient and fast system to make that happen. And it's not necessarily said that only a self-assessment, as said, will be more effective and faster than if there's help in in getting it done.
Thank you, Dirk. Kristina, quick.
If I would be a startup and hear this discussion and have to discuss and have to look in the future and say, where I put my ideas and my innovation, I would say, I don't want to go there. And therefore, let us first of all help the good brains to have an innovation ecosystem here and environment here in Europe and be and stay here with our European way before we discuss how they should be regulated by third parties.
Thank you, Kristina. Now our time is up. I'm very sorry that we couldn't touch upon the sandboxes issue, because this would have been also a very interesting discussion. I know Hessen is doing a lot. But my colleagues are looking at me already, so we have to close here. I will just say thank you. Thank you to all the panelists. It was a good discussion. I think we could debate for 2 more hours because it's such an interesting debate. So many aspects to take into account. I say, Irina, Dragoș, Axel, and Kristina, I wish you all the best for your continuing work as policymakers on this very important subject. And Dirk, of course, I wish you all the best for rolling out AI assessment schemes. And I really hope that in 1 year, when we have our next AI conference, we will be able to have an agreement on the AI Act, and then we will be able to discuss what's really in there and what are the requirements. So, this being said, thank you very much, and back to you, Laura.